Lisa Hayes was once a talented violinist, respected in the music world for the mesmerizing melodies she created. At 27, she had everything anyone could desire: fame, a stable career, and a love that seemed eternal with Julian Montgomery. Julian was the man she trusted most, the one who had once promised that no matter how the world crumbled, he would stay by her side. They had known each other since her days at the conservatory, and their love was a fusion of artistic passion and shared dreams of a brilliant future. Lisa had once believed that her life would always be a perfect symphony, with Julian as the only one playing it alongside her. But everything changed after that fateful accident a year ago. On a cold, rainy evening, while returning from a performance, her car suddenly lost control and crashed into the highway guardrail. Lisa remembered nothing after the terrifying impact. When she woke up, all she saw was darkness. She had completely lost her sight. Her entire world collapsed. The music she loved was now just echoes in an endless void. The compositions written especially for her, the dazzling stage lights, none of it mattered anymore. Yet amidst all the losses, she still believed she had Julian. He had been by her side in the early days when she struggled to adjust to a life without light. It was he who held her hand, guiding her through the streets she once adored. It was he who had whispered, "I will never leave you," as she sobbed on the first night she realized she was truly blind. And yet now, when Julian called her to a luxurious restaurant, his voice gentle but distant, she suspected nothing. She thought it was a special date. Perhaps he wanted to propose to her, to prove that no matter how cruel fate was, he would keep his promise. She sat there in an elegant blue dress chosen with the help of a friend, her fingers absently tracing the silver fork while listening to the sounds around her. Laughter, clinking glasses, soft music. Everything painted a perfect picture, except for the growing unease in her heart. Julian arrived late, and as he sat down across from her, she immediately sensed the change in his breathing. "Julian," she smiled faintly, trying to read his face through the words he spoke. "What's the occasion today?" Julian was silent for a moment before finally speaking in a voice she had never heard from him before. "Lisa, I think we should end this." The words felt like a dagger piercing straight into her heart. She froze. It took her a few seconds to be sure she hadn't misheard. "End this? What do you mean?" Julian sighed, placing his silverware down. "I'm sorry, but we can't continue this anymore." She felt her breath catch in her throat. "You're joking, right?" "No." Julian's voice was firm, without hesitation. Lisa let out a short, disbelieving laugh and shook her head. You're lying. What's wrong? Is your job too stressful? Are you worried about me?" "No, Lisa." Julian's voice softened. "I met someone else. I'm getting married." The entire world seemed to stop. What was he saying? Someone else? Getting married? How could that be? "No, that's impossible." Lisa shook her head, tears rising in eyes that could no longer see. "You promised. You said you would never leave me. You said you loved me." "I did love you," Julian whispered, "but things have changed." "So it's because I'm blind?" she asked, her voice breaking. Julian didn't answer. His silence was the most painful response she could receive. Tears streamed down her face, hot and uncontrollable. She reached out desperately, searching for his hand, but Julian pulled away. "What will I do without you, Julian?" Her voice trembled. "You're all I have left." Julian stood up. "I'm sorry, Lisa." And then he walked away. She listened to the sound of his footsteps fading, swallowed by the noise of the restaurant, until they disappeared completely. Lisa sat there alone, among dozens of strangers. No one approached her. No one helped her stand. All that remained was her and the darkness. She didn't know how she managed to leave the restaurant. She only knew that her legs carried her aimlessly through the streets she once knew by heart. Tears streamed down her face. The world felt more unfamiliar than ever. She walked and walked until her legs grew weary and her body was exhausted. Then a loud car horn blared. Lisa flinched. "Get out of the way!" a voice shouted. Before she could react, a strong arm grabbed her, pulling her away just as a car sped past at a terrifying speed. Her entire body collapsed against a stranger's chest. her frantic heartbeat mixed with his heavy breathing. "Damn it, what were you thinking?" The deep voice of the man echoed in her ears. Lisa gasped for breath. I, I don't know." She didn't know what she had been doing. She didn't know where she was. All she knew was that she had just been saved. Darkness still enveloped Lisa. The scent of exhaust fumes, the screeching of brakes, and the panicked voices of those around her echoed in her mind. But the only thing she could feel clearly was a strong arm holding her. Her ragged breaths mingled with the steady heartbeat of the stranger. That firm grip hadn't loosened, as if he feared that letting go would send her stumbling into another dangerous situation. "Damn it!" a deep voice spoke. "What were you thinking? Do you have a death wish?" Lisa trembled. She didn't know how to answer. She only knew that she had no strength left. Suddenly everything became hazy. Her head spun. Her breath grew weaker. When Lisa regained consciousness, she felt an unfamiliar softness beneath her. No longer the cold pavement, nor the stiff chair of the restaurant, but a plush bed with the scent of fresh linen. The room was silent except for the faint ticking of a distant clock. Fear gripped her. "Where am I?" Lisa struggled to sit up, but her body was still too weak. "You're awake?" A male voice spoke from the doorway, low, steady, yet carrying a trace of concern. Lisa tensed. She didn't know who this man was, didn't know where she was, and that terrified her more than anything. Where am I?" She clutched the blanket tightly, anxiety spreading through her. "Calm down, you're at my house." The man stepped closer, his voice patient. "I'm David Thornton." David Thornton. The name sounded vaguely familiar, but she couldn't remember where she had heard it before. You saved me?" she asked, her voice still shaky. "That's right. If I hadn't pulled you back, you'd probably be in a hospital right now. Or worse." A cold shiver ran down her spine. "Thank you," she murmured, though she remained wary. "But why am I here? Can you take me home?" David was silent for a second. "Where is your home?" Lisa opened her mouth to answer, but then she realized she had no home to return to. After losing her sight, she could no longer work, no longer take care of herself. She had moved in with Julian, and now Julian had left her. She had nothing. Pain crashed over her like a relentless wave. She bit her lip, unwilling to cry in front of a stranger, but her heart was bleeding. David seemed to sense it. He pulled up a chair and sat beside her, his voice gentler now. "Do you want to tell me what happened?" Lisa clenched her hands. She didn't want to. She didn't want to say Julian's name, to repeat the cruel words he had said. But sitting in the darkness, with no one else beside her, she realized just how alone she was. And for some reason, this man's voice gave her a small sense of security. She took a deep breath. "I used to be a violinist," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. "But a year ago, I had an accident and lost my sight. Everything fell apart after that. I lost my career, lost the ability to do what I love most. And then," her voice cracked, "the man I loved left me too." David said nothing. He just listened in silence. "He told me he found someone else, someone who wasn't a burden." She let out a bitter laugh, her tone laced with pain. "You know, I actually believed that no matter what happened, Julian would stay with me. I was stupid enough to believe that." Silence filled the room. David exhaled, his voice calm but carrying an edge of sharpness. "He's a fool!" Lisa was startled. She hadn't expected a stranger to react like that. David continued, "If he truly loved you, he wouldn't have left you over something that can change." Lisa frowned. "Change?" David stood up and walked toward the window. "Have you ever considered restoring your sight?" She froze. "Isn't it too late? I've seen so many doctors, and they all said my chances were close to zero." David turned back to her, his eyes gleaming with a confidence that was almost unnerving. "Those doctors weren't me." Lisa's eyes widened. "I'm an eye surgeon," he said. "Not just that. I invest in regenerative medicine. I've performed surgeries that others claimed were impossible." She couldn't believe what she was hearing. "You're saying you can help me?" David nodded. "Yes, I can restore your sight. A wave of emotion surged through Lisa. Hope? She had stopped allowing herself to hope. Lisa sat on the soft leather chair, her hands unconsciously clutching the hem of her shirt. She didn't know if she could trust this man, but there was one thing she was certain of. He was no ordinary person. A long silence stretched between them, broken only by the ticking of the clock in the room. You don't believe me. David's voice was calm, yet unwavering. Lisa swallowed hard. I... She took a deep breath, trying to steady her voice. I've been to many hospitals, seen countless doctors. They all said my chances of regaining my sight were nearly zero. And now you're telling me you can cure me. How am I supposed to believe that? David stepped closer, not rushing to respond. She could sense his slow but decisive movements, as if he wasn't accustomed to explaining himself, only presenting results. The doctors you met may be skilled, and he said, but they are not me. A shiver ran down Lisa's spine. It wasn't arrogance in his tone. It was absolute confidence. She hesitated. You're an eye surgeon. Not just that, David replied. I'm the founder of one of the world's leading research centers for corneal regeneration technology. Lisa froze. He was talking about corneal regeneration? She had heard of those studies before, but they were still in experimental stages. She didn't know how to react. You don't have to believe me right now, David continued, but let me examine your eyes. Then I'll show you whether or not your hope has a real foundation. Lisa clenched her fists. A part of her still doubted him, but another part wanted to believe. Lisa sat still in the examination chair in David's clinic. The air was silent, filled only with the soft hum of medical equipment. Relax, David said as he adjusted the diagnostic machine. I won't hurt you. She gave a small nod. The following minutes passed in silence as David conducted the examination. Lisa couldn't see what he was doing, but she could feel the precision in his every movement. After a long while, David straightened up, took out a notebook, and jotted something down. Well? Lisa asked, anxious for his answer. David smirked slightly. I have good news for you. Her heart pounded. Tell me. David slowly closed his notebook. Your condition can be fully restored. Lisa felt her breath hitch. The surgery will require a compatible corneal transplant, and fortunately, I have a reliable supply source, David explained. My technology can help you regain your sight, not blurred or temporary, but completely. Lisa couldn't believe what she was hearing. Really, she stammered. I'll be able to see again? David nodded firmly. Yes. She placed a hand over her chest, trying to suppress the overwhelming surge of emotions. After months of living in darkness, after all the despair she had endured, finally she had a sliver of hope. But, David continued, his voice dropping slightly, there's one condition. Lisa's hope wavered for a moment. She tightened her grip. I knew it wouldn't be free. David was silent for a moment, as if debating whether to say it, but then he lifted his head, his gaze sharp. I'll perform the surgery for you for free. Lisa froze. For free? She repeated, unable to believe it. David nodded. Yes. I won't take a single cent from you. She frowned. Then, what's the condition? For the first time, Lisa detected something enigmatic in David's voice. He stared at her intently before speaking slowly. After you regain your sight, I will ask you to do something for me. Lisa stiffened. What is it? David shrugged. I can't tell you yet. She gripped the hem of her shirt tightly, sensing that something was off. Why not? I have my reasons, David said simply. But I can assure you, it's nothing illegal. I won't ask you to do anything unethical or something that would harm you. Lisa studied him, searching for any hint of deception, but his gaze remained cold, unwavering. A long silence stretched between them. She didn't know what to do. If she agreed, she would get her life back, but in return, she would owe him an unknown debt. Lisa closed her eyes, taking a deep breath. Did she even have a choice? She had lost everything: her sight, her career, her love, and her future. She couldn't keep living in darkness. She had to take the gamble. Slowly, she opened her eyes. All right. Her voice was quiet but resolute. I accept your condition. David smirked, the smile of a man who had just secured exactly what he wanted. Well then, Lisa, he said, something unreadable flashing in his eyes. Prepare yourself. In 1 week, I will perform the surgery. Lisa sat on the plush sofa in the living room, feeling the morning sunlight filtering through the window, gently warming her skin. She couldn't see it, but she knew David was standing nearby, silently watching. Today was the last day she would live in darkness. For the past week, David had meticulously prepared for the surgery, conducting daily health checkups to ensure she was strong enough to endure the complex procedure. He also spent time explaining the process to her, making sure she understood both the operation and the recovery period. This surgery won't be painful since you'll be under general anesthesia, David assured her. But when you wake up, your eyes will be completely bandaged for at least a week. You'll need to be patient. Lisa nodded. She had already prepared herself for the waiting period. As long as there was hope, she could endure anything. Are you absolutely sure I'll be able to see again? She asked, still anxious. David was silent for a moment before replying slowly. Nothing in medicine is ever 100% certain. But I believe your chances of recovery are very high. It wasn't an absolute promise, but it was enough to keep her faith alive. That morning, Lisa woke up earlier than usual. She couldn't eat breakfast due to nerves, her palms damp with sweat despite the cool weather. David approached her, his deep voice soothing. You're going to be fine. She gave a weak smile. I've never had surgery before. This isn't the first time I've performed one like this, he responded with unwavering confidence. She didn't know why, but just hearing his voice reassured her. The operating room was brightly illuminated by sterile white fluorescent lights. Lisa lay on the surgical table, her heart pounding as she listened to the hum of medical machines. Then she felt someone gently take her hand. It was David. Relax, Lisa, he said softly. She nodded, and within seconds, the anesthesia took effect. Darkness consumed her once again. The next time Lisa woke up, everything was still dark. But this time, it wasn't because she was blind, it was because her eyes were tightly bandaged. She lifted a hand, instinctively reaching for the bandages, but a deep voice stopped her. Don't touch them, David reminded her. Your eyes need complete rest for a week. Lisa lowered her hand, sighing. She had hoped that as soon as she woke up, the world would appear before her. But as it turned out, the path to light wasn't as immediate as she had imagined. Over the following days, David remained by her side, caring for her. He personally prepared her meals, ensured she took her medication on time, and monitored her recovery. I feel so useless, Lisa murmured one day as David helped her drink some water. He chuckled. Don't be silly. You're recovering, not useless. She was silent for a moment before admitting, I'm just scared. What if the surgery fails? For the first time, David didn't answer right away. But then his voice softened, more gentle than usual. If it fails, we'll find another way. But I believe you'll succeed. Lisa didn't know why, but those words filled her with warmth. 7 days later, the moment finally arrived. Lisa sat in a chair in David's clinic, gripping the armrest tightly as she felt his fingers carefully removing the bandages from her eyes. She didn't dare to breathe too hard. The final layer was removed and David's voice was gentle. Slowly open your eyes. Lisa's heart pounded. She kept her eyes shut for a moment, took a deep breath, and then she opened them. At first, everything was just a hazy white mist. But then, colors began to emerge. Shapes started forming. Light flooded into her eyes. She could see. A tear slipped down Lisa's cheek. David, she choked out. I can see. He said nothing, just watched her in silence, his deep blue eyes filled with quiet satisfaction. Lisa looked around, seeing the white walls, the sunlight streaming through the window, the pale blue curtains swaying gently in the breeze. And then, when she looked straight ahead, she saw David. For the first time, she saw the man who had saved her. He was taller than she had imagined, with a strong build and sharp features. But his eyes held a depth of calmness she hadn't expected. She didn't know what to say, so she simply continued crying. David reached out, gently wiping away her tears. Welcome back to the light, Lisa, he said, his voice warm, yet carrying an undercurrent of emotion. Lisa smiled through her tears. She had returned, but now that her eyes had been opened to the world, she suddenly remembered the mysterious condition David had set. What awaited her next? Lisa looked at the world with new eyes. Everything was brighter, more vivid than she remembered. She had returned to the light, but a part of her couldn't fully embrace the joy, because she owed a debt. David Thornton had given her back her sight, but he had set a mysterious condition beforehand. She needed to know what it was. One late afternoon, as the sun cast golden rays through the curtains of David's apartment, Lisa sat across from him, her gaze serious. "David," she spoke, her voice steadier than before. "You told me you needed me to do something after I regained my sight. It's time you tell me what it is." David studied her for a long moment. He set his coffee cup down, crossed his arms, as if carefully choosing his words. "I want you to marry me," he said firmly. Lisa froze. She blinked, thinking she had misheard. "What?" David exhaled slowly. "I want you to marry me for 1 year." She let out a short laugh, but it quickly faded when she saw the seriousness in his expression. "You're being serious?" she asked, unable to believe her ears. Lisa sat in silence, her hands clenched in her lap, feeling dizzy at David's proposal. Marriage. She had considered many possibilities. Perhaps he wanted her as an assistant, a performer for one of his projects, or even a model for his medical research. But marriage? She didn't know how to react. "You want me to marry you?" she repeated, as if hoping she had misunderstood. David leaned back in his chair, his expression calm yet resolute. "Yeah," he confirmed. "For 1 year." 1 year. Lisa let out a breathless laugh, but it wasn't one of amusement. "Why me?" David sighed, setting his cup down, his gaze locking onto hers, measuring her thoughts. "Because I need a wife on paper to win custody of my daughter, Mia Thornton." Lisa instinctively clenched her hands. She hadn't known he had a child. "My ex-wife abandoned Mia when she was only 3, David continued. "She never truly cared for her. But now she's back and wants custody, not because she loves Mia, but because she wants to use her as leverage in our family's financial dispute." He paused, his eyes darkening with weariness. "The court wants Mia to be in a stable family environment. If I have a wife, my chances of keeping her will be much higher." Lisa took a deep breath. She could understand that. No child should be caught in a legal battle driven by greed. But why her? "You have plenty of choices," she said, her voice quieter. "Wealthy, beautiful women who would gladly be with you. Why me?" David tilted his head slightly as if weighing his answer. "Because you have nothing to gain from me," he said simply. "You understand loss, what it means to fight to reclaim your life. And most importantly, I know you won't use this marriage for personal gain." Lisa looked down at her hands. Perhaps he was right. She had nothing left, no family, no stable career, no clear future. But could she really agree to marry a man she didn't love, just to repay a debt? The room fell into silence. Lisa felt deeply conflicted. A part of her screamed that she couldn't do this, that marriage wasn't something to be exchanged like a favor. But another part of her, she owed David a great debt. Without him, she would still be trapped in darkness, wandering aimlessly, lost. He had given her back the light, and perhaps this was the only way she could repay him. A gentle breeze drifted through the window, stirring the sheer white curtains. Lisa gazed outside, her eyes clear as a still lake. Yet beneath the surface, a fierce inner battle raged. David didn't rush her. He simply sat there, waiting patiently. Finally, Lisa lifted her head. "All right," she said, her voice steadier than she had expected. "I'll marry you." David didn't seem surprised. He merely nodded, as if he had anticipated this answer all along. "Are you sure?" he asked. Lisa let out a small, wry smile. "I'm not sure at all," she admitted. "But you saved me, and this is the only way I can repay you." David studied her for a long moment before standing up. "Then we have a deal," he said, extending his hand. Lisa looked at it, a handshake that would bind her fate to a man she had only recently met. She reached out and took his hand. It was warm, firm, but as their skin touched, Lisa felt as if she had just signed a contract whose consequences she couldn't possibly foresee. Even after agreeing to David's proposal, Lisa still felt a lingering hesitation. She knew she was entering a marriage without love, yet she also understood she couldn't turn her back on the man who had given her back her sight. And more importantly, she was about to meet Mia Thornton, the little girl who was the sole reason David had asked her to marry him. The next morning, David drove Lisa to a quiet estate on the outskirts of the city. "We'll have breakfast with Mia," he said as he parked the car. "She's very sensitive to strangers, so don't worry if she seems distant at first." Lisa nodded slightly, but in truth, she had never felt more nervous. They stepped into the house where warm sunlight filled the space, accompanied by the comforting aroma of freshly toasted bread. Lisa caught sight of a little girl, about 7 or 8 years old, sitting at the dining table. She had soft curls and striking blue eyes, just like David's. Mia paused mid-sip of her milk, her round eyes staring at Lisa. "Good morning, Mia," David said gently, ruffling his daughter's hair. "This is Lisa. I told you about her. Remember?" Mia didn't answer immediately. She continued to study Lisa for a long moment before turning to David. "Is she your girlfriend?" Lisa tensed at the blunt question. David chuckled. "She's someone very special to me." Mia looked at Lisa again, then quietly set her glass down. "Is she staying here?" Lisa swallowed, unsure how to respond. "We'll get to know each other," David interjected, his voice patient. "She's a little shy, but she's a wonderful girl." Mia said nothing, but she pulled her chair a little closer. Lisa decided to take the first step. "Hello, Mia. I'm Lisa." Mia regarded her cautiously. "Do you like candy?" The question took Lisa by surprise. "I do. Strawberry's my favorite." Mia blinked, then wordlessly pulled a small candy from the pocket of her dress and placed it on the table in front of Lisa. "Then, you can have this," she murmured. Lisa slowly picked up the candy, smiling. "Thank you, Mia." David sat beside them, watching the exchange with a hint of warmth in his gaze. Perhaps, Lisa thought, becoming part of this family wouldn't be as difficult as she had feared. Lisa looked at herself in the mirror, her fingers lightly tracing the delicate veil draping over her shoulders. The wedding dress was exquisitely designed, but she felt no happiness. A normal bride would have a heart fluttering with excitement, eagerly awaiting the moment she walked down the aisle. But she wasn't. She was about to marry David Thornton, a man she had only known for a short time, and this was not a wedding built on love. In exchange for the light she had lost, she had to become his wife for 1 year. Taking a deep breath, Lisa left the room and made her way toward the ceremony. The wedding was held in an elegant, historic church, attended by people important to David, but no friends or family of Lisa's. She had chosen not to invite anyone because she knew this was nothing more than a contractual marriage. David stood at the end of the aisle, dressed in a sharp black suit. He looked at her with calm, unwavering eyes. There was no excitement, no sweet words of affection, only a slight nod as she reached him. The vows were exchanged, both of them saying, "I do," without hesitation. As David's lips brushed against her cheek to seal the ceremony, Lisa felt as if she had stepped into an entirely different world, one where she was David Thornton's wife, but not the woman he loved. Mia, the bridge between them. After the wedding, Lisa moved into David's estate. Mia seemed to be the happiest about their marriage. The little girl clung to Lisa as if she had been waiting forever for a mother figure. "Lisa, which room are you staying in? Can I sleep with you?" Mia asked eagerly as Lisa stepped into the house. Lisa chuckled, patting her head. "I have my own room, but if you ever have nightmares, I'll be there for you." David stood nearby, quietly watching the interaction. Perhaps deep down, he knew that Mia was the only reason Lisa had agreed to this marriage. Over time, Lisa realized that David wasn't as cold as she had initially thought. He remembered little details about her, how she preferred tea over coffee, how she liked to read before bed. One night when she caught a mild cold, he personally made porridge and brought it to her room. "Just rest. I told Mia not to bother you tonight," he said, placing the bowl on the table. Lisa blinked, surprised. "You made this yourself?" David only shrugged before turning away. But Lisa noticed the slight redness in his ears, as if he wasn't used to doing such things for someone. She had once believed that this marriage was just an agreement, a way to repay a debt. But in that moment, As she looked at the man before her, she realized that her heart was beginning to change. The past returns. One afternoon, as Lisa was picking Mia up from school, she unexpectedly spotted a familiar figure in the distance. Julian Montgomery. He stood there staring at her, his eyes filled with shock and disbelief. Lisa? Her grip tightened around Mia's hand instinctively. She didn't want to see Julian again. She didn't want to remember the pain he had caused her. Julian hurried toward her. You can see again? Lisa took a deep breath, keeping her voice steady. Yes, and I have nothing to do with you anymore. Julian shook his head, his gaze filled with regret, like a man realizing he had lost something precious. I didn't know. If I had known you could regain your sight, I wouldn't have left you. His words made Lisa laugh bitterly. So if I had stayed blind forever, you would have still abandoned me, wouldn't you? Julian opened his mouth, but no words came out. Mia tugged at Lisa's hand, her voice soft. Lisa, who is he? Lisa crouched down and gently patted Mia's head, smiling. No one important, Mia. She took Mia's hand and walked away, leaving Julian behind, his eyes filled with remorse. But he wasn't going to give up so easily. That night, as Lisa returned home, her phone vibrated with a message from an unknown number. We need to talk. I can't let you go just like this. Lisa clenched her phone tightly. Julian was back, and he had no intention of stopping here. Lisa knew that her marriage to David wasn't built on love, but at the very least it was built on mutual respect and trust. Here she felt safe, warm, something she hadn't felt in a long time. She believed that no matter what challenges arose, she and David could face them together. But she never expected a storm to be brewing on the horizon. One morning, as Lisa stepped into the living room, she was met with an unfamiliar presence. A woman, elegantly dressed, sat on the sofa, with one leg crossed over the other, sipping tea as if she owned the place. The woman lifted her gaze, crimson lips curling into a smug smile. Hello, Lisa. I'm Vivian Laurent, David's ex-wife. Lisa froze in place. Vivian slowly set down her teacup, her sharp eyes scanning Lisa from head to toe. Are you enjoying your life as Mrs. Thornton? Lisa steadied herself. What are you doing here? Vivian smirked, crossing her arms. I've come to take back my daughter. The declaration hit Lisa like a punch to the chest. I lost Mia once, but I won't let that happen again, Vivian continued, her voice dripping with confidence. David thinks that marrying you will secure his custody? How ridiculous. I've hired the best lawyers. Just wait and see, Lisa. Soon I'll take Mia away from here, and you'll just be a passing shadow in David's life. Lisa knew Vivian wouldn't back down easily, but she never imagined that the woman would go so far as to conspire with Julian. Ever since their chance encounter, Lisa had tried her best to avoid Julian, but he wouldn't leave her alone. He sent endless messages, called her repeatedly, even had flowers delivered to the estate. Then one day she received a text from him. Meet me just once, Lisa. I need to talk to you in person. Come to the cafe near your house. Lisa had intended to refuse, but then she remembered the betrayal, the pain he had caused her. She needed closure. She needed to put the past behind her once and for all. She had no idea she was walking into a trap. Julian had arranged for paparazzi to photograph them from a distance. He purposefully reached for her hand, leaned in just enough to create the illusion of intimacy, ensuring that every angle looked compromising. Meanwhile, Vivian compiled messages Julian had sent, ones Lisa had never responded to, manipulating them to tell a completely different story. The next day, the headlines exploded. Billionaire David Thornton's wife caught secretly meeting her ex, a scandalous affair. Marriage on the rocks, the true reason behind David Thornton's failing relationship. That evening, Lisa returned home to find David waiting in the living room. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes were dark, stormy. On the table lay a newspaper, the bold headline screaming betrayal, alongside a photo of her and Julian. Do you have anything to say? David's voice was low, dangerous. Lisa looked at the photo, then met his gaze. You actually believe this? She asked, her voice trembling with anger. David clenched his fists. Then tell me, why did you meet Julian? Lisa bit her lip, about to explain, But then she realized no matter what she said, he wouldn't believe her. Vivian had planned this too well. The evidence was too convincing. "I didn't betray you," she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. David said nothing. He only stared at her, his eyes filled with quiet disappointment. From that day forward, he became distant, cold. The warmth that had slowly grown between them was gone. He still cared for Mia, still fulfilled his duties as a husband, but between them, an invisible wall had formed. Lisa felt the gap widening, but she refused to justify herself. If he couldn't trust her, then no amount of words would change his mind. Love, if it ever existed between them, had to be built on belief, not explanations. So instead of speaking, she chose to act. She would prove herself, not with words, but with her heart. Lisa spent more time with Mia, taking care of her as if she were truly her mother. When David came home exhausted after long days, she was always there with a warm meal. She stayed beside him, silently, without resentment or excuses. When the media continued to attack her, instead of hiding, Lisa stood tall. She publicly declared, "This marriage is not about money. I love David. I love our family." She didn't force David to believe her. She simply stayed. Every day, with every small gesture, she showed him that she had never left. Not with words, but with her heart. One morning, David received a call from his assistant. "Sir, we've discovered that someone hired paparazzi to take photos of Madam Lisa. That person is Julian Montgomery." David narrowed his eyes. "Keep digging." Less than a day later, an email arrived in his inbox, containing undeniable proof of Julian and Vivian's entire scheme. Julian had deliberately orchestrated the encounter with Lisa, hiring photographers to capture misleading images from the most deceptive angles. Vivian then fed these images to the press, along with doctored messages, turning Lisa into a supposed cheater in the eyes of the public. And in David's own. David's grip tightened around the phone as he read every detail. Rage burned in his chest. He had been wrong. He had doubted the woman he loved. David's revenge. David refused to let this go unpunished. Using his vast network of influence, he swiftly dismantled Julian's business empire. Within a week, every major contract Julian had was terminated. Investors withdrew, and his company was hit with a lawsuit over an old scandal he had desperately tried to cover up. Julian never saw it coming. One moment, he was a thriving businessman. The next, he was watching his world collapse overnight. Vivian fared no better. The court received overwhelming evidence proving that she had no real interest in Mia's well-being. She had only wanted to use her daughter as a pawn to manipulate David. When the custody case was reevaluated, the verdict was final. Vivian lost all rights to Mia. Mia would stay with David and Lisa, forever. That evening, Lisa stood on the balcony, gazing at the night sky. Though the scandal had been cleared and the media had retracted their false accusations, the wounds David had left on her heart remained. Then she heard footsteps behind her. David appeared, his eyes heavy with remorse. "Lisa," he murmured. She didn't respond. He stepped closer, his voice hoarse. "I'm sorry." Lisa let out a small, bitter laugh, still not turning to face him. "I was wrong," David continued, his expression pained. "I let my fears cloud my judgment. I doubted you. I hurt you. And I regret it more than anything." Finally, Lisa turned, meeting his gaze. "What if I hadn't fought to prove myself?" she asked, her voice trembling. "What if I had given up? Would you have ever believed me?" David fell silent, because he knew the answer. He had made a terrible mistake. Then, in an act that left Lisa stunned, he dropped to his knees before her. "I love you, Lisa." She held her breath. David looked up at her, his eyes filled with raw sincerity and regret. "I've loved you for a long time," he admitted, "but I was too blind to see it, too afraid of betrayal to trust in what we had." Tears welled in Lisa's eyes, because deep down she had already fallen for him too. In that moment, she realized this marriage was no longer a contract. It had become something real, something precious. She stepped forward, gently touching his face. "I love you too, David." His hand tightened around hers before he pulled her into a deep kiss, one filled with love, remorse, and a promise. From that moment on, they truly belonged to each other. The next morning, as Lisa woke up, the soft morning light filtered through the curtains, casting a warm glow across the bed. She slowly opened her eyes, only to find herself wrapped in a familiar embrace. David. He was still asleep, his steady breast brushing against her ear. A gentle smile touched Lisa's lips as she reached up, her fingers lightly tracing his face. She had never imagined waking up beside him like this. Not because of a contract, not because of an agreement, but because of love. She thought back to the beginning, when she had viewed this marriage as nothing more than a duty, a debt to repay. But now her heart had truly found its place. As she shifted slightly, David stirred. His eyes fluttered open, and a lazy smile appeared on his lips. "Good morning, Mrs. Thornton," he teased. Lisa chuckled. "You woke up before me, didn't you? Stop pretending to be sleepy." David smirked and pulled her closer. "I just wanted to stay like this a little longer. Do you know, for the first time, this marriage actually feels real." Lisa gazed into his eyes. "I feel the same," she whispered. No vows were needed, no spoken promises. They both understood. From this moment on, their marriage was no longer a meaningless contract, a true marriage. The days that followed were filled with warmth and quiet joy. The distance between them had vanished. No more cold silence, no more doubts or hesitations. They no longer had to pretend in front of the courts or the world. David spent more time at home, creating moments of peace and laughter with Lisa and Mia. Some evenings he took Lisa for long walks, watching the sunset from their balcony. Other nights, they simply sat beside each other in comfortable silence, enjoying each other's presence. Lisa no longer felt alone. She started reconnecting with her passion for music, practicing her violin once again. She was no longer just David Thornton's wife. She was Lisa, a talented artist, a strong woman who had overcome countless struggles to rediscover herself. David often sat and watched as she played, sometimes with admiration, other times with amusement. "Did you know," he mused one evening, his voice filled with warmth, "I once thought this marriage was just an exchange, but now I've realized something." Lisa set her violin down and walked toward him, her eyes shining. "And what's that?" His lips curved into a soft smile. "That you are the greatest thing that ever happened to me." Lisa leaned down, wrapping her arms around him. "And you are mine," she whispered. No one was happier about their newfound love than Mia. One evening, as the three of them decorated the Christmas tree together, Mia suddenly grabbed Lisa and David's hands, pulling them closer. "Mom, Dad," she chirped excitedly. "We're a happy family, aren't we?" David laughed, leaning down to kiss her forehead. "Of course we are, sweetheart." Mia turned to Lisa, her blue eyes filled with hope. "Then, can I call you Mom?" Lisa froze. Until now, Mia had always called her Aunt Lisa, or simply Lisa. Never Mom. She looked down at the little girl's expectant eyes, her heart trembling. Slowly, she knelt to Mia's level, brushing a few curls from her face. "If that's what you truly want, then I would be honored to be your mother." Mia's face lit up with pure joy as she threw her arms around Lisa. "Mom!" Tears welled up in Lisa's eyes, not from sadness, but from overwhelming happiness. David stood beside them, his heart full. Nothing could ever tear their family apart again. One evening, after Mia had fallen asleep, David and Lisa sat on the sofa, quietly enjoying a glass of wine. Lisa leaned against David's shoulder, feeling the comforting warmth of his embrace. "You know," she murmured, "when I lost my sight, I thought my life was over. I had lost all hope. But now I feel like the luckiest person in the world." David gently squeezed her hand. "I once believed I would never have a real family," he admitted. "But you changed that. You gave me and Mia a home, something I thought I'd never have." Lisa lifted her head, gazing into his eyes, her expression filled with sincerity. "We started this as a contract," she whispered, "but I don't regret saying yes." David smiled, tilting her chin up before pressing a soft kiss against her lips. "Then let me propose to you properly," he murmured, "not because of an agreement, not because of any conditions, just because I love you." Lisa let out a small laugh, tears of happiness streaming down her cheeks. "I say yes," she replied without hesitation. A year later, the spring sun bathed the Thornton estate in golden light. Lisa stood before the mirror, her hand gently resting on her stomach, overwhelmed by a wave of indescribable emotions. She was pregnant. She turned toward the door, her voice barely above a whisper. David. He looked up from his work, a soft smile on his lips as he saw her. What is it, love? Lisa bit her lip, unable to find the words. Instead, she simply held out the pregnancy test in front of him. David's gaze dropped to the small object in her hands. For a moment, everything went still. Then in the next second, he shot to his feet, his eyes wide with shock. You're pregnant? His voice trembled with emotion. Lisa nodded, tears glistening in her blue eyes. Yes, we're going to have a baby. David exhaled sharply before suddenly pulling her into a tight embrace, holding her so fiercely she could barely breathe. My God, Lisa, I can't believe it. I'm going to be a father again. He pulled away just enough to kneel down, pressing a tender kiss to her stomach as he whispered, Hello, little one. Welcome to the world. I promise to love you and protect you for the rest of my life. Lisa laughed, feeling pure joy radiating through the room. There was no longer any darkness between them, only love, family, and a future full of light. True love doesn't need to be proven with words. It reveals itself through actions, patience, and unwavering trust. When faced with misunderstandings instead of resentment or walking away, Lisa chose to prove her love through quiet persistence and genuine care. In the end, truth always finds its way to the surface, and real love withstands any storm. Their story is a reminder that trust, perseverance, and sincerity are the foundations of lasting happiness. Thank you for following this story. Let us know what you thought, and don't forget to subscribe for more emotional and powerful stories. Leave a comment. Share this story with others. Stay tuned for the next one. Until next time, love always wins.